Imagine a ship so vast it actually dwarfs the Titanic, not just in size, but in, sheer complexity.
A floating city.
Exactly. We're talking about the Costa Concordia. It's carrying, 4,252 people, leaving on this beautiful European tour from Italy in January 2012.
A standard trip. Should have been completely routine.
But within hours, this symbol of modern engineering is on its side. It's a disaster that makes maritime history for all the wrong reasons. So today we're taking a deep dive into the sources you shared, especially focusing on the analysis in the Costa Concordia disaster, a legacy of deception.
Right.
And our mission here is to look beyond just the crash. What the material really shows is a terrifying case study in what happens when a catastrophic human error is made so much worse.
Made lethal.
Made lethal, yeah, by a captain's immediate, and it seems calculated, decision to just cover up the truth.
That's really the core of it. The collision, that was the start. But the deception, that's what guaranteed the tragedy. So we're going to break it down into, I think, 3 key phases. First, you have the reckless act itself, this navigational ego trip.
Okay.
Second, the hour-long, absolutely fatal delay caused by the lies. And then finally, the staggering costs, human financial engineering, that just highlight this complete systemic failure.
Okay, let's get right into that first failure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the man in charge, Captain Francesco Schettino.
Right.
He's commanding this massive state-of-the-art ship, and yet only 2 hours into the voyage, he intentionally veers off the approved path.
Not an accident. That's key.
Not an accident at all. The source material says the safe route was, 7 or 8 kilometers offshore? To just turn away from that for a risky maneuver, that isn't navigational error, is it?
No, absolutely not. It was premeditated. And what's so wild here is the complete lack of any operational need. I mean, this wasn't bad weather. It wasn't a technical problem.
So what was it?
Schettino decided, completely voluntarily, to do what's called a sail past near Giglio Island. He called it a tribute.
A tribute?
Yeah, he basically wanted to swing this gigantic cruise liner, a vessel larger than a city block, incredibly close to the island, just to wave at a retired captain who lived there.
That sounds less like a tribute and more like a bus driver taking a dangerous detour down a rocky alley just to show off to a friend.
That analogy is perfect, and you should hold on to it, because the scale of that deviation, it really shows the scale of the ego involved.
So how close did he get?
The ship came within 150 meters of the coastline.
150 meters. For a ship that size.
It's insane. That's barely a football field and a half. For a vessel that needs that much water to float, it is.
Yeah.
It's suicidal. He was gambling.
And at 9:45 p.m., that gamble failed. The ship hits underwater rocks.
And this wasn't just a scrape. The sources are clear on this. It tore a 70-meter-long hole right along the hull. A gash.
70 meters. So what does that mean mechanically for the ship? What happens instantly?
The word instantly is the right one. A tear that big just opens the side of the ship to the sea. Water poured into the engine room, swamped the generators.
So all power gone. Just like that.
All power, propulsion, navigation, lights, everything. At this point, the emergency is undeniable. You are on a dark, sinking vessel with thousands of people on board.
But this is where the story shifts, isn't it?
Yeah.
It goes from being a terrible maritime accident to a story of profound moral failure.
Exactly.
Schettino feels this massive jolt. He knows he's lost power. What was his calculation? Why didn't he immediately alert the Coast Guard? Or the passengers?
He was thinking about himself. That's the only conclusion. He prioritized preserving his career, his reputation, over the lives of over 4,000 people.
So his first instinct was self-preservation.
Absolutely. He knew that admitting he'd deliberately taken the ship off course and hit rocks would be the end of his career. So he lied.
And what was the lie?
The passengers were told over the intercom that it was just a simple electrical failure, a blackout, nothing to worry about.
A temporary inconvenience.
Right. While the ship is actively taking on water.
That denial, that deliberate lie, that's really the turning point.
Right.
Because he didn't just lie to the passengers, did he?
No. He withheld the truth from the Italian Coast Guard for over 30 critical minutes. Critically, this was even as the ship was starting to tilt.
So how do they find out?
From the passengers. That's what's so damning. Passengers were feeling the shudder, seeing the power go out, feeling the tilt, and they started calling the police on the mainland themselves.
Wait, so passengers were calling for help before the captain did?
Yes, which raises a huge question, right? If your passengers are alerting authorities before the ship's commander, who is actually in control of the emergency.
No one. And that 30 minutes of denial, that directly led to a deadly delay in the evacuation. Let's just walk through that timeline again. The collision is at 9:45 p.m.
Right. But the general emergency alarm, the signal for the crew to get to their stations for evacuation, that doesn't sound until 10:33 p.m.
That's almost 50 minutes later.
48 minutes lost. And the formal order, the command to actually abandon ship and launch lifeboats, that doesn't come until 10:54 p.m. We lost an entire hour.
A whole hour in service of a lie.
An hour you can never get back.
And when a ship that size is taking on water, every single minute the danger just grows exponentially. What did that lost hour actually mean for the people on board?
It meant physics took over. The water pouring in caused the ship to tilt, and tilt badly. By the time that abandonment order finally came, the vessel was already listing at a severe angle. It eventually settled at about 30 degrees.
And that angle makes everything harder.
It makes it almost impossible. Suddenly, lifeboats on the high side, you can't launch them. They swing away from the deck. Hallways become steep, slippery cliffs. It wasn't an orderly evacuation, it was chaos. A panicked free-for-all.
And in the middle of this chaos,
Yeah.
what was the captain doing?
Well, this is where we reach the ultimate point of failure. At 11:19 p.m., just 25 minutes after he finally gave the order to abandon ship, he abandoned his post.
He left the ship.
He got off.
Cruise ship captain who apparently ran for a lifeboat and got off the wreck while his crew and passengers were still on board fighting for their lives.
He reached the island of Giglio while thousands of his passengers were still trapped on that tilting wreck, fighting for their lives.
It's the absolute opposite of what a captain is supposed to do.
It's the ultimate dereliction of duty, and it led to that now infamous audio recording, the exchange between him and Coast Guard Commander Gregorio De Falco.
Da Livorno, parlo col comandante?
Sì, buonasera, comandante Falco.
Mi dica il suo nome, per favore.
Sono il comandante Schettino, comandante.
Schettino?
Sì.
Ascolti, Schettino. Il scaccino la percorre in senso inverso, sale sulla nave e mi dice quante persone e che cosa hanno a bordo. Chiaro? Guardi, Schettino, che lei si è salvato forse dal mare, ma io la porto veramente molto male. Faccio passare l'anima dei guai.
Tanto perché ci sta l'altra lancia che si è fermata.
Lei vada a bordo, è un ordine. Lei non deve fare altre valutazioni. Lei ha dichiarato l'abbandono nave.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. DeFalco is on the line, and he is furious.
Rightfully so. He calls Schettino directly and just screams that order at him. Get back on board, Cazzo! Get back on board, damn it!
But Schettino refused. He was already safe on the island.
He argued he had fallen into a lifeboat, a very convenient accident. But DeFalco's rage wasn't just about protocol, it was about saving lives. Schettino was the only one with the knowledge of the ship's layout and condition to coordinate the rescue effectively from the scene. By running, he actively made the situation worse.
But the sources are also careful not to paint everyone with that same brush of cowardice. There's another side to this story.
A very powerful counter-narrative, yeah. We see incredible heroism from the crew, especially the lower-ranking staff. You know, people trained to serve food, not manage a disaster.
Right, the hospitality staff.
Exactly. They stepped up where their command completely failed. Even when they were being told it was just a blackout, they were helping panicked passengers, guiding them to lifeboats, often putting the guests' safety way ahead of their own.
People like the waiter, Russell Rebello.
A true hero. He died after giving his own life jacket to a passenger. He stayed on board to help others and never made it off.
That is the definition of duty, compared to the captain's total abandonment.
And that delay, that lost hour, that's ultimately what cost lives. In the end, 32 people died. Many were trapped on lower decks in their cabins.
Why couldn't they get out?
The water pressure from the flooding combined with the extreme angle of the ship. It made it physically impossible for them to open their cabin doors. They died because the evacuation order came too late.
So after the human tragedy, the focus then shifts to the ship itself, this massive wreck just sitting there off the coast. The sources call it a constructive total loss. What does that even mean?
It's a brutal insurance term. It means that the estimated cost to repair, recover, and clean up the wreck was actually more than the value of the ship itself.
So it is totaled.
Completely totaled. And removing it became one of the most complex and expensive salvage operations in history.
What made it so difficult? You couldn't just, drag it away?
Oh no, it was way too big, and it was resting precariously on these underwater granite ledges. The operation was called parbuckling. It was immense.
How'd they do it?
They had to build these huge custom steel structures and attach these giant watertight boxes, they're called caissons, to the high side of the ship.
Okay.
Then they slowly flooded those caissons with water, and the weight of that water gradually pulled the ship upright. It was less like a rescue and more like building a temporary buoyancy system to lift a dead city from the sea.
The cost of that one decision, that one ego trip, it's just staggering. What was the final bill?
The total cost of the cruise line for everything, the loss of the ship, the salvage, the environmental cleanup, the payouts, it was around $2 billion.
$2 billion. For a maneuver that was never supposed to happen.
And while the company paid the financial price, Schettino faced the legal one. In 2017, he was finally sentenced to 16 years in jail for manslaughter and abandoning his ship.
So, if we pull back, what does this all mean for us? What's the core lesson here? It seems so simple, but so chilling. It's about leadership that puts ego over responsibility.
That's it. The most dangerous moment of the entire crisis wasn't hitting the rock. It was the hour Schettino spent trying to protect himself.
Let's go back to that bus driver analogy you like.
It's like the captain was a bus driver who took a reckless detour down a rocky alley just to wave at his friend.
Yeah.
He crashes, the bus is hanging off a cliff, but instead of helping people out, he gets on the intercom and says, "Folks, the engine just stalled for an entire hour." And then he jumps out the window first and watches the disaster from the safety of the sidewalk. That sequence, reckless act, act of lie, total cowardice, that defines this entire tragedy.
So just to recap the key takeaways for you listening. The proximity, 150 meters from shore. The delay, an hour-long wait for the emergency alarm. Yeah. And the cost.
Well,
and a mind-boggling $2 billion.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material really shows that technical skill means nothing without moral courage. Schettino knew how to sail a ship in calm waters. He just didn't know how to lead when a crisis hit.
So the tragedy wasn't just the collision.
No, the tragedy was the systemic failure to admit fault. And that raises a really important question, I think, for all of us. When you're facing a crisis in your job, in your life, which is more deadly, the initial mistake or the time you spend trying to cover it up?
That's a powerful thought to end on. The true cost of a lie.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing your sources and trusting us with this deep dive. We'll talk to you next time.